Nobody warns you that grief doesn't end. It just learns to hide better between visits. That's the part that confuses people the most. And honestly, it confused me too for a long time. We're taught grief is a process with an endpoint, 5 stages, and then you're through it, done, healed. But that's not what actually happens to most people, and there's real research behind why. A woman explained it to millions of people a few years ago using something her doctor told her after she lost her mother. Picture a box with a ball inside it and a button on the wall of the box. In the beginning, right after the loss, the ball is enormous. It barely fits in the box. Every tiny movement, every memory, every song sends it slamming into that button, and the button is pain. You can't function because the ball never stops hitting it. That's the part everyone recognizes, the early stage, the part where you can't breathe. But here's what she said next, and it's the part that actually explains what you're living through years later. Over time, the ball doesn't disappear. It shrinks. The box stays the same, but the ball gets smaller, so it hits the button less often. Weeks go by, sometimes months, where you barely feel it at all. You laugh again. You have normal days. You almost forget the button is there. And then something completely ordinary happens. A smell, a specific song, a stranger who tilts their head the way she used to, and the ball finds the button anyway. And it hits just as hard as it did the very first week. Not softer, just as hard. That's not a setback. That's not you failing to heal. That's just the ball still being in the box, because it never actually leaves. There's a companion idea to this, from a grief researcher who studied it long before that analogy went viral. She said grief doesn't shrink at all. What actually happens is your life grows around it. The grief stays exactly the size it always was, but you build a bigger life around that same fixed point of pain, more relationships, more days, more distance between you and the day it happened. So it takes up less space by comparison, even though it never got smaller on its own. I think that reframes the whole thing, because it means the goal was never to make the grief small enough to disappear. The goal was just to keep living around it, and somehow that counts as healing too, even when the ball still finds the button 7 years later and puts you on the floor for an afternoon. Because that happens. Some days it's a Tuesday, completely unremarkable, and you're on the ground in a position your body remembers from childhood, and it feels like the loss just happened yesterday, not years ago. That doesn't mean you're stuck. It means love doesn't have an expiration date, and grief is just what that love looks like when it has nowhere left to go. If you've had a day like that, recently, or years after the fact, where it hit you completely out of nowhere and put you on the floor, I want to hear what triggered it. Not the whole story if you don't want to share it, just the trigger. A song, a smell, a stranger's face. I think naming the specific thing that set it off helps more than people expect, because it turns something that felt random and cruel into something that at least makes sense. Here's what I keep coming back to though, the part that actually changed how I think about the whole thing. We treat those sudden waves like evidence that something is wrong, like we should be further along by now, like there's a timeline we're failing to meet. But the ball doesn't get that big for people you didn't love. Nobody collapses on the floor over someone who didn't matter. The size of that wave, even years later, is just the size of what they meant to you. Still fully intact, still completely real, just visiting less often than it used to. You're not doing grief wrong. You're just still loving someone you can't call, and apparently that doesn't come with a deadline, no matter how many years the calendar says have passed.